So welcome to my very quick guide for the Pisces Cup CM11 that will be starting in a couple days. The Pisces Cup will be at the Spring Tenno Show, but crucially it takes place on the Hanshin Racecourse as opposed to the Kyoto Racecourse. So if you are creating practice rooms for it, be sure that you create a custom room so that you can set it to be the Hanshin 3200 and not the Kyoto. Importantly, this racecourse is 3200 meters, so it's going to be a very, very long track. So let's talk absolute minimum stamina requirements. So I've listed here 1000 stam, 600 guts, plus 1 gold, plus 1 white for lates and ends to hit around a 70% spurt rate. For fronts and pace, you want to add an additional 100 stamina to that to hit about a 60 to 70% spurt rate. You want a 90% or higher spurt rate. So these stamina numbers are not ideal. It is just what I have listed as the absolute minimum rule of thumb that you would take this stat line and then start building off of it with more stats or more recoveries. Here I have some examples of some closer to borderline stamina rates on both an end closer and a front runner. Again, these are not good showcases. These are just a showcase of the bare minimum stam that you might want to have and their according spurt rates that you can see down here. Now for fronts, the CM, I've already put out a video specifically on Kita-san and how she interacts with Valentine Bourbon, but in general, fronts are going to be very meta because Victory Cheer is a good acceleration for them. Fronts will need a lot of mid-race skills and very high wit, and they can use Silent Suzuka as a runaway to boost the other fronts in order to push more forward ahead in the track. So pace chasers, I would say the only really relevant pace chaser is Christmas Ogre, who functions more of it as a gamble pace, because she's relying on both Radiant Star and her Unique. So Radiant Star and her Unique are both very similar skills, and Radiant Star can actually proc her Unique. If Ogre Cap procs Radiant Star and or her Unique close to the final spurt, she can win very, very dominantly. But this is definitely a gamble, and so you shouldn't really rely on this winning all the time. Now, for this, I really would recommend taking 3 additional mid-race recoveries as well as Radiant Star. Do not take 777s because that activates way too late on this track. If you're not running Christmas Ogre and you are still running at pace, you just really want to pray to hit Radiant Star or Nimble Nav off of a front. Lates are pretty similar to pace, where really your main win con is praying to hit Radiant Star or Nimble Nav or No Stopping Me, but that's kind of all they really have. I think that lates are in a really, probably the worst spot in the CM, so I would not expect to see very many of them. You can run them for overtake targets for your ends, like if you're running Tamamo Cross or Brian, but overall, I don't think that lates are going to be very strong, so I would lightly discourage folks from running them. Ends are the other meta position in the CM. So for ends, your 3 major ends that we're probably going to be seeing are going to be Gold Ship, Narita Taishin, and Tamamo Cross. And they all have slightly different ways to build them, but the main thing you really want to make sure that you get is straightaway Spurt, or if you're running Taishin, Encroaching Shadow. If you are running Taishin, I would recommend trying to run Swinging Maestro over Sleeping Lion for your main recovery. For Tamamo Cross, you definitely want to run your mid-race for Tail 9, and I would also try to think about maybe putting an overtake target somewhere in your team, such as a pace chaser, maybe another late surger, or maybe you're running a front in hopes that there will be 3 fronts and one of the fronts will not hit their excels and fall behind for Tama to overtake them. You will probably be seeing fronts in most of your lobbies, especially as the CM gets into round 2 in the finals, so I would say that stacking mid-race and wit is going to really help your end closers. How do we get mid-race? So typically you don't seek specific mid-race skills, or at least I don't, but I just pick up all the skills that I get during my run that proc in the mid-race. So examples like straight skills, corner skills, ramp up, tail held high. So all of those are really, really great to pick up, and they can really make your mid-game stronger so that you are better positioned for the final spurt. So for decks, I've listed all the cards that I think that people will be using most in this CM. Generally, you want to try to hit at least 50 race bonus for the Trackblazer scenario. 60 race bonus is better. You really, if you can get even more than 60, that's great, but I would not really kill your deck synergy or drop really important skills to hit like 65-70% race bonus. In general, I would look at this list, see what cards from this list you have, see what cards from this list you need to borrow, and go from there in terms of the kind of decks that you want to build. And now let's talk about the team comps. I would expect a lot of really high performing comps to be primarily frontrunners or end closers. And you can see that here where I've listed kind of the main front/end comps. So I think that all of these Umas under the alternatives would work fairly well in these roles, but you might have to do some aptitude fixing or try to build them in a specific way so that they can function similarly to the other kind of more meta fronts and ends. Here I have listed the Umas that I would recommend that you can use at only 1 or 2 stars. Due to the high stamina requirements of this CM, I do think that Stam debuffing can work. I would really only recommend you try to focus on end closers and front runners, since those are going to be your main priorities to debuff in this CM. And unlike the Manhattan Cafe card, I think it would be very difficult to run this Rudolph card and still create a viable ace. So if you are running this Rudolph card for subdued end closers, subdued front runners, then you might want to consider just making one dedicated debuffing Uma. In summary, this CM is going to be a pretty big stat check, and it might be difficult for players with less developed accounts to really be able to compete. I think it's still possible, but you would probably suffer if you don't have an account that is at least a couple months old. As long as you're focusing on the stamina requirements and trying to make sure that you have Umas that can cross the finish line, you can still at least get a couple wins. Best of luck with the CM, and I hope it goes well. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.